From complete strangers to now friends, this is the entire story of how we were able to help Joan. We do something called Good Work Wednesday, where we spend one day a week helping people in our community of Tulsa, Oklahoma 100% for free with whatever problems and projects that they have. Joan's neighbor had sent us a message saying that she needed some help, and she definitely did. Homeless people had broken through her fence, trashed her yard, and made their shed their home. Now, Joan has a daughter with spina bifida, and so this ramp being in good condition was extremely important. So not only was I going to fix that, but I was going to clear up all this landscaping that was overgrown. Day one, I started by just clearing all the landscaping and stuff that was overgrown around that pathway. I cleared all the weeds, I pulled out all of the plants, and then I started fixing the ramp just to make sure that it was sturdy and reinforced. I also fixed this lip on the edge of the ramp so the wheelchair would have no problems going up and down. I then started on this side of the house where weeds, vines, and trees had overgrown and kind of taken over the whole thing. Since it was completely inaccessible, she only had this small path on the other side of her house that even lawnmowers weren't able to go through. I knew this problem was not going to be an easy fix, so on my first day, I was able to just focus on all the landscaping and the path on the side of her house. But we were able to get it nice and cleaned up, and she was extremely appreciative, but we weren't even close to done. The second day that I came back got super crazy, but I decided to start on the trash and just picking up as much of it as I could. As I was about to start on that, Joan was telling me how sometimes the homeless people actually live in her crawl space under her house, so I made sure to check that for her and give her the peace of mind that there was in fact nobody living in there right now. We also made sure to get that all locked up so that will not happen again in the future. I cleared the rest of the landscaping on the side of the house to make a big entryway for me to go back and forth in, and then I closed up the fence where the homeless people were coming in originally. This is where this day got extremely crazy. As I was picking up trash and putting it all into bags, I got a call from Olivia, my wife, telling me that someone was breaking into our house at that exact moment. Now, we had security cameras, so she called the police while I pulled out my phone to see, and I got in my truck since I was only about 10 minutes away and sped there as quick as I could. I chose not to show his face in any of the videos because he was young, and honestly, I'm sure he had a pretty rough upbringing. But I also wasn't about to just let him get away with damaging my house. I ended up driving to the house, finding him, following him, and getting him arrested by Tulsa police. Now, fortunately, he never got into our house, but he did cause around $1,000 in damage. But a big shout out to Tulsa police because they did arrest him and he did go to jail. But let's forget about my problems and get back to Joan's. What's really cool is this was her second shed, and in the times between when I came, she, along with some friends, really did a great job at clearing it almost all the way out. Because a lot of the things in the shed were her late husband's belongings, I wanted to make sure she had the ability to go through it before I went through and threw a lot of it away. Her husband was very talented and even hand-built that workbench you see on the left. So now we're back to finishing up picking up the trash and removing the shed so the homeless people could not come back. I put on my Craftsman work gloves and then started putting all of the trash back into bags where I had left off whenever my house was getting broken into. Once all the trash was picked up, I grabbed some zip ties from my bag and closed up the hole in the fence that they were coming through. I knew I wouldn't have enough time to get rid of the shed, so I decided in the meantime it'd be best to just go ahead and crush it up so they wouldn't keep coming back. I grabbed a sledgehammer and a drill and started taking off some panels and flattening it as much as I could. But in the meantime, Joan actually had some other things she needed some help with. So the day turned out to be just me checking off some things on her honey-do list. Her dryer vents had been so clogged that she ended up just venting all of the gas into her garage and then opening the doors to ventilate it. But we had no problem using that brush and a drill to get all of the clogs out and allow her to use her vents again. She then told me the window unit going into her daughter's room was not working very well and smelled very bad, like mildew or mold. Even though I don't know the first thing about window units, I thought maybe I could take off the panel and clean up at least some of the rust or mold that was on the bottom by washing it. While attempting to fix it, I actually ended up breaking it entirely by puncturing the line with all the pressure in it that was supposed to hold the coolant. Of course, I wasn't about to just leave her with an even more broken unit than she had before, so I went to Lowe's and bought her a brand new one and installed that for her. So now her daughter has a much cooler room and one that doesn't smell like mold or mildew. At this point, I had spent 3 days working at Joan's house getting things accomplished, but I really wanted to get things wrapped up for her. In between the third and fourth time I was there, the homeless people actually ended up coming back, and even though I thought demolishing the shed would be enough, they pitched a little section of it and made themselves basically a tent. While we were posting about all this, we were getting all kinds of messages about displacing the homeless people and that we should be helping them as well and not just Joan. But when it comes down to it, they were completely trespassing on her private property, and our priority was making sure that she felt safe in her own home. A local company called Bison Bins donated a bin for us to get rid of all of the big pieces with, and I took apart the shed and started filling up the dumpster. It didn't take long for it to start filling up as we got more and more pieces from the shed into it. And even though the weather wasn't great on this last day we were working, we were determined to get all of it emptied out as much as we possibly could and fill this dumpster up. Something I didn't mention in any of the other videos is that Joan is working with an organization to get some help for those homeless people. After I got rid of all of the first shed, everything was still stacked up from when Joan and her friends went through the second shed. So I ended up moving all of that into the dumpster one by one. I wanted to start with that pile of trash first before starting to take apart the rest of the second shed, but I was able to fit all of that in and I still had a little bit of room, so I started chopping apart a lot of the frame of the second shed. I was able to get about half of the second shed into the dumpster before it was completely full, but I did leave a small section covering her husband's workbench, which one of our followers is actually coming to pick up. Joan was really happy about that. The dumpster was full and Joan was extremely happy, and that is all for this project, but stay tuned, they're every week.